Today we're taking a look at the latest NHL trade rumors. We're talking about some players like Vitaly Kravtsov of the New York Rangers, looking at John Klingberg of the Dallas Stars. Could the Oilers trade for a goalie like John Gibson? And where might Dylan Strome be off to in the next little while? All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at all the latest NHL trade rumors from around the league. Before we get into the rumors, though, I do want to touch on Evander Kane quickly. We do have an update on the situation with the NHL. It's nothing too major, but essentially to start the NHL season, the NHL is going to allow the San Jose Sharks to have him as a non-roster player. So for cap purposes, that's not going to count. That's going to be that way until the investigation is concluded here. So of course, as you might recall, we've talked about before, we don't know when those results from the investigation are going to become public, but he is currently under investigation for two different things. One of those being that they're investigating the possibility that he may have used a fraudulent vaccine record to show that he was vaccinated. So there's that, which we don't know. I've never seen the document. We have no clue if that's true or what. They're looking into that. And then, of course, secondly, of course, because of his situation with the divorce and the court proceedings with his soon-to-be ex, I guess you call her, as his estranged wife, the accusations there for domestic assault are being looked into as well. So it's really difficult to say how long things are going to be kind of, dragging out here. I would not be surprised at all if the vaccine status stuff, if that was legit and they can prove that to be true, that's probably enough for a lengthy suspension, possibly even additional punishment. I'm not sure if they'd be able to avoid the contract or what, but it very well could lead to Kane's career coming to an end. Not necessarily the vaccine fraudulentness on its own, but I guess fraud is a pretty serious crime. It's hard to say, but I know there's difference of opinions that at the very least will be suspension worthy, but it could end up with the Sharks voiding the contract. I don't know. It's going to be a while probably before we find anything additional out. I don't really think it should take all that long to discover whether or not his proof of vaccination is fraudulent or not. I know where I am locally, when it comes to record keeping and everything like that, it would be pretty simple and easy through our local public health officials to find out. So I don't really know what's taking so long in that regard, but that's kind of where things are at. But at least for right now, it's not counting against the Sharks cap. But at the same time, where they don't know a long-term implication of that, they can't just go out and spend the money and try to find another player to come in and kind of replace that production because they don't know what the long-term implications are just yet. So it's still a situation we'll have to monitor here, and hopefully we'll have something soon to get an idea the long-term future of Kane in San Jose and overall in the NHL. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL trade rumors I want to look at here today. First up, I want to touch on Vitaly Kravtsov and the New York Rangers. Now, the information that we first talked about yesterday was when the information came to light that he is basically looking for a trade. He wants out of New York. He did not make the opening night roster, and the team has already granted permission to his agent, Dan Milstein of Gold Star, to basically talk to other NHL teams to try to get the conversation going to help facilitate a trade. Now, one thing that we can look at here today, I want to quickly update, is that it's believed that the asking price will be similar to what we saw with another Rangers prospect in a similar situation, Lias Andersson. Of course, Lias Andersson was their first round pick the year before Kravtsov, so it's back-to-back first rounders that have not panned out and ended leaving the organization on a bad note here, which is certainly not great asset management by the Rangers, but still at the end of the day, they've got lots of other prospects that have worked out quite nicely, but still you don't really want to see that kind of stuff happening here. He ended up in quite a long drawn-out dispute and ended up being traded to the Los Angeles Kings for the 60th overall pick, which was basically a late second rounder. So, according to guys like Chris Johnson, it very well could be a similar type of payment for a team acquiring this player as the same. I mean, it very well could be a second round pick, which is unfortunate when you get a high first round pick that ends up getting traded just a few years later for a second round pick. It seems like a really diminished value and a step backwards for the organization. I guess it's also a possibility if they found another player in a similar predicament that maybe they could do a swap. Like there was really close to having a trade pulled off between the New York Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers trading Elias Andersson to Edmonton for Jesse Puljujarvi when Puljujarvi was in his dispute with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I think the Oilers are probably quite pleased that did not happen. He's come back to Edmonton, with a new regime there, and has worked out quite nicely. He seems to be happy, and to be honest, if he continues to play top 6 minutes with guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, I think he can be a future 30-goal scorer myself, and I think they'll be quite happy and content to hang on to him. It's going to be tough to probably cap-wise to figure out keeping all their young guys, but that trade almost happened between those two teams, and obviously Anderson ended up going to LA later on. So I don't think the Rangers are really pressured here to strike a trade. It could happen quickly if teams really want to give this guy a chance and are willing to pony up a decent return. But like I said, because of that, look how long they held on to Elias Andersson. It's a situation where they're not obligated, and he very well could take his good old time getting traded. But it really boils down to teams coming forward. If you look around the NHL, you look at all the teams that are rebuilding, they probably would be your most likely destinations that would be able to possibly give him a roster spot right away to give him a chance. So you're looking at teams like maybe like a Detroit or Buffalo or San Jose, Anaheim, maybe Ottawa. Not as likely there, but still things like that are the most likely places I would think. But we'll have to see where that situation goes. It could end very quickly, or it could get drug on for some time. Now, speaking of a trade that could come together quickly, or it could wait a little bit, but likely sooner than later, according to Pierre LeBrun and other NHL reporters, that Dylan Strome, of course, is likely getting traded by the Blackhawks. They have more than enough center depth between the returning Jonathan Toews, Kirby Dach. Of course, they brought in Tyler Johnson, and it just doesn't really make sense for Dylan Strome to attempt to be like a fourth-line player for them. He's not really that kind of guy. Doesn't really fit the mold of what you think of in a player playing that kind of role. So I certainly understand and makes sense that, he's a player they could part with. Now, they're not out there aggressively trying to move him. They're not desperate for cap space. They are obviously, like many teams, they don't have a ton of wiggle room, and they would be obviously welcome to get that $3 million space back if they can trade for something that's more future-based, like a draft pick or another prospect that's not immediately on their NHL roster, something to that nature. Now, according to NHL reporters, they did indicate that the Hawks and the Ottawa Senators have had discussions around this player, but they're not certain that they're going to continue, that the Senators may not necessarily still be in that market. But at this point, we know that the Senators are going into the season banged up. They're already without guys like Austin Watson. They're already without Colin White for an extended period of time as well. And of course, Brady Tkachuk remains unsigned. Their fourth line right now looks pretty weak. They have third line players that could be fourth line players. And to be honest, I think Strome is a player who could probably be more like a third line player there. Unless they want to give him more of a shot at second line, and put Shane Pinto more as the third line. But still, it's a situation where I'm not entirely convinced that's going to happen, but apparently they have had conversations. So could they circle back to that? If the Senators get even, say, one more injury in the first couple games, would not be shocking. Pierre LeBrun suggested that a deal could be together and have him moved sometime in the next week or two. But at the same time, they didn't feel pressured to get it done, so it could drag on a little bit longer depending on where things go. We don't know of any other teams at this point that have had discussions with the Blackhawks, but I'm sure there are at least a few out there willing to give this former number 3 overall pick in the 2015 draft an opportunity. Of course, a lot of his junior success came with guys like Alex DeBrincat, who was playing with Chicago. Of course, he was a junior teammate of Connor McDavid as well, and things just haven't quite worked out on a consistent basis for him. He didn't really have the best development in the Coyotes organization where he started. They got over to Chicago, had a great start, reignited that magic with DeBrincat, but then things have kind of been inconsistent the last couple years since then. So another fresh start for him is probably in order here. Now, before we go further into this video, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Next up, I want to talk about Dallas Stars defenseman John Klingberg. Now, no guarantee that Klingberg is going to be traded, but of course, when you're looking at all these players that are signing extensions right now, the ones who don't get deals done ahead of the season are going to be probably the ones that are most talked about going into the years, possibly being trade bait. If you're on the final year of your contract and you're not re-signed, well, then there's certainly, at the very least, is some doubt about your future with your current organization. Now, when it comes to Klingberg, there is mutual interest to remain with the Dallas Stars, but they also do have a lot of money that they've invested in that blue line after inking youngster Muriel into a mega contract extension for 8 years. They brought in Ryan Suter, who's not super expensive compared to what he used to be, but still, it's another chunk of money that's already tied up to get Esa Lindell on a decent sized contract too. So to have Klingberg on a fair value contract for him will just make a really expensive top 4D. And as much as I think Dallas could have one of the better blue lines in the NHL this year, it might prove challenging and difficult to get a deal done. According to Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com, like I said, mutual interest on both sides to get a deal done, but they're far apart on negotiations. They're nowhere close. And according to what he's been told, those close to Klingberg are saying that he's very disappointed that a deal couldn't come together before the start of the NHL season. And with Dallas being set to play their first game, it's at this point, unless we get some last-minute breaking news, it seems unlikely that that gap is going to be bridged and a deal will be in place so that he can kind of focus on hockey and not worry so much about the negotiations. It does impact players' performance for sure. Many players like to not negotiate in season because they find it very distracting. So I'm not sure if they'll continue at this point. Based on what Pagnotta is saying, it sounds like both sides are okay to continue dialogue for a little while into the season to see what they can find. But Klingberg's a right shot defenseman who has offensive talent, can be helpful on the power play. If Dallas has a season like last year, for example, where they're missing the playoffs, I know a lot of that was due to injuries, but still, like, they're already in a situation, they're starting the year with a few banged up players again. If they don't have a good year and things are not trending towards a playoff berth, I have to think they're going to get a lot of calls on Klingberg. Doesn't mean that they trade him, but it's probably going to be tempting with some pretty good offers coming their way. So certainly another situation we're going to have to monitor as the season goes on. And lastly, we want to talk about the Edmonton Oilers and the goaltending situation. And Frank Saravalli's recent article, most of it is around predictions he's made, but still, obviously, a lot of his predictions, being an NHL insider, are going to be based on intel that he has and conversations he's had from around NHL agents and executives. So he feels that the Oilers early on in the year are going to have to trade for a goaltender, which I completely concur with. I'm not overly confident in Smith and Koskinen. If they can find a way out of that Koskinen contract, it could be huge for the Oilers, and they need a longer-term solution in place. And a couple of names that have been mentioned, one is Jonas Korpisalo in Columbus and John Gibson in Anaheim. Now, I think Korpisalo might be the more likely trade piece here, just because it would be a lot more easier logistically with everything cap-wise kind of factored in here. Gibson would be tough. He's making over $6 million. Even if Anaheim takes back the final year of the Koskinen trade, they would also have to likely take something else off the Oilers roster. They're going to want a decent return for Gibson. He's a franchise goaltender, in my opinion, has been really good for Anaheim. They're not going to give him up for just anything here. I would think the Oilers would have to include one of their young forwards that's on a one-year deal, so on the final year of their deal. So either Yamamoto or Puljujarvi would be my guess, because they're likely going to have a difficult time affording to sign both of those players as well. After bringing in Zach Hyman, you already got McDavid, Draisaitl, RNH, Darnell Nurse on a mega extension as well. They bring in a $6 million goaltender, along with everything else on there. It's going to be pretty tough. So the Ducks would have to take some money, and they're going to want something for the future. I do think that the pieces are there. I mean, I think that the Ducks would have a lot of interest in a variety of other prospects, whether it be Bouchard or Broberg or even some of the other forwards like a Benson or other ones. But like I said, Yamamoto's still young. I think the Oilers could put together a great package to entice the Ducks to be interested in a deal, but it's going to be very, very tricky cap-wise. So I think it's more likely that they would turn to Columbus, who they've been linked to for some time, and maybe go for a guy like Jonas Korpisalo. After the extension for Elvis Merzlikins, it's certainly apparent that it looks like he's the goalie of the future in Columbus, and Corpy could be finding himself on the move sometime this year anyway. And with the link there that was been previous, it makes a lot of sense that the Oilers would kind of re-examine that to see if they could find a way to make that happen. Your thoughts are on all the latest NHL trade rumors down below in the comment section. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.